I knew moving into an HOA-controlled neighborhood would be a headache, but I never expected it to get this ridiculous. It all started when I received an official-looking letter in my mailbox, stamped with the dreaded HOA seal. Dear homeowner, it has come to our attention that your garage is in violation of HOA aesthetic standards. Garages must be used for parking vehicles only and must remain free of clutter or personal storage. Please comply within 14 days or face fines of $100 per day. At the bottom of the letter was the signature of none other than Karen Whitmore, the HOA president. She had been a thorn in my side since the day I moved in, always nitpicking and reminding me about the most absurd rules, like the time she fined my neighbor for having curtains that weren't neutral tones. But this, banning me from using my garage the way I wanted, that was a new low. My garage was my workspace, my storage, and, most importantly, my personal refuge. I had a mini fridge, a workbench, and a TV in there. There was no way I was giving it up. I decided to pay Karen a little visit. I marched up to her house and rang the doorbell. She opened the door with a tight smile, her blonde bob not moving an inch. "Ah, Mr. Lawson, I figured you'd come by." She crossed her arms. "Yeah, I want to know why you think you have the right to tell me how to use my own garage." Karen sighed dramatically, as if she were dealing with a toddler. "Garages are for cars, Lawson. Not man caves or whatever mess you've got in there. We have community standards." I gritted my teeth. "And if I don't comply?" She smirked. "Then you'll rack up fines until you either follow the rules or lose your home. Simple as that." I clenched my fists, took a deep breath, and forced a smile. "Fine. I'll repurpose my garage. But you'll regret this, Karen." She laughed as I walked away. "Oh, I doubt that." "Oh, but she would." Because if Karen wanted to play games, I was about to take things to a whole new level. I wasn't just going to repurpose my garage, I was going to turn it into a fully functioning restaurant. If Karen wanted to dictate what I could do with my garage, I'd make sure she'd regret every second of it. She wanted it to be used for something functional? Fine. I'd make it very functional by turning it into the most talked about restaurant in the neighborhood. I spent the next 2 weeks working nonstop. I cleaned out the garage, painted the walls, installed better lighting, and even brought in a few small tables and chairs. With the help of my buddy, Greg, who happened to be a chef, I set up a professional-grade grill, a mini fridge stocked with fresh ingredients, and a small counter for taking orders. Then came the finishing touch, the sign. I hung a wooden board above the garage door with bold, hand-painted letters that read, "Lawson's Garage Grill, home of the best burgers in town." I made sure to check every single HOA rule before going forward with my plan. Nowhere did it say I couldn't operate a home-based business from my garage. And, thanks to a little legal loophole, as long as I wasn't creating a disturbance or blocking the street with excessive traffic, there was nothing Karen could do to stop me. The day of the grand opening, I sent out flyers, posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, and even gave out free samples to my closest neighbors. The response was better than I could have ever imagined. By lunchtime, people were lining up outside my driveway. Families, teenagers, even some of the more reasonable HOA members stopped by to grab a bite. Greg worked the grill like a pro, churning out perfectly cooked burgers, hot dogs, and grilled chicken sandwiches. I handled the customers, cracking jokes and keeping the atmosphere lively. The smell of sizzling meat and fresh spices filled the air, wafting down the street like an open invitation. And then right on schedule came Karen. She stormed over, wearing her usual beige pantsuit, her HOA clipboard clutched in one hand like a weapon. Her nostrils flared as she took in the side of my garage-turned restaurant. "What is the meaning of this?" she shrieked, loud enough to turn heads. I wiped my hands on my apron and gave her my best customer service smile. "Welcome to Lawson's Garage Grill, Karen. Care to try our house special? First meals on the house. Her face turned red. You cannot run a restaurant out of your garage? This is a residential area. I shrugged. According to the HOA bylaws, there's no rule against running a home business. And since I'm not disturbing anyone or blocking traffic, I'm fully compliant. Karen sputtered, flipping through her rulebook like a malfunctioning robot. She had nothing. Meanwhile, my customers, our neighbors, were watching, waiting to see what she would do. Greg, sensing the tension, decided to have some fun. He held up a burger with a dramatic flair. Folks, what do you think? Should Karen here try one of our famous Lawson's Grill burgers? The crowd erupted in cheers. Yes. Give her a burger, someone shouted. Let her taste what real food is. Karen's face twisted like she'd just swallowed a lemon. She straightened her blazer, took a deep breath, and hissed, "This isn't over." Then she turned on her heel and stormed off. I grinned as I watched her go. Oh, Karen, this was only the beginning. Karen didn't waste any time plotting her next move. Less than 24 hours after my restaurant's grand opening, I woke up to find a fresh HOA violation notice taped to my front door. Notice of immediate violation. Unauthorized commercial activity on residential property. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $250 and possible legal action. I laughed. Oh, Karen, so predictable. I grabbed a letter, made myself a coffee, and took a leisurely stroll to the HOA office, where I knew she'd be waiting. And sure enough, there she was, sitting behind her desk with a smug expression, like a queen on her throne. She steepled her fingers as I walked in. Mr. Lawson, I assume you received the notice? I tossed it onto her desk. Sure did. And it's completely bogus. Karen arched an eyebrow. Oh? And why is that? I leaned forward, grinning. Because my restaurant isn't an official business. I don't charge customers. It's a private gathering space where people donate for the food I cook. Ever heard of community potlucks? Completely legal. Her smirk faltered. That's a loophole. I chuckled. It sure is. And you know what else? I checked with a lawyer. Turns out, the HOA has no authority to regulate private social events. So unless you plan on shutting down every neighborhood block party, you've got nothing. Karen's face turned red. She clenched her jaw so tight I thought her teeth might shatter. This isn't over, she hissed. Oh, I know, I said cheerfully. But in the meantime, how about a burger? I made a new recipe inspired by you. I call it the Bitter Karen Extra Spicy, no sweetness. She stood up so fast her chair nearly toppled over. You are disgusting. I winked. I do my best. Over the next few days, Karen escalated her attacks. She sent out a mass email warning the neighborhood that my garage restaurant was a health hazard and might be violating local food safety laws. She even went as far as calling the county health department on me. That backfired spectacularly. When the inspector showed up, I welcomed him in, offered him a burger, and showed him my spotless workspace. He looked around, nodded in approval, and said, "Looks cleaner than half the restaurants I've inspected. No violations here." I made sure Karen was standing nearby when he said it. Her face was priceless. Then came her last-ditch effort, a desperate attempt to get my customers to turn against me. She went door to door, ranting about the dangers of an unauthorized food establishment, but the problem was, people loved my restaurant. My neighbors weren't just customers anymore, they were fans. Word had spread beyond the neighborhood. I started seeing people from other communities showing up, eager to try the legendary Lawson's Garage Grill. The HOA might have had power on paper, but in reality, Karen was losing control. And I wasn't done yet. If Karen thought she could bully me out of my garage, she was in for a surprise. Because I had one final trick up my sleeve, one that would make sure she would be the one to leave my neighborhood for good. Karen had thrown everything she had at me: bogus fines, health inspections, and desperate smear campaigns. But none of it worked. My garage-turned restaurant was more popular than ever, and now I was ready to hit her with my biggest move yet. It all started with a conversation I had with my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins. She had lived in the neighborhood for over 30 years and knew every little detail about the HOA's history. You know, dear, she said one afternoon while munching on a Lawson's Grill burger, Karen's been running this HOA like a little dictatorship. But did you know that HOA board members can be voted out if enough residents sign a petition? I nearly dropped the basket of fries I was carrying. Wait, what? She nodded. Yep, we just need 51% of homeowners to agree. And let me tell you, people are sick of her. A plan started forming in my mind. Karen had been a nightmare for everyone, not just me. If I could rally enough neighbors, we could vote her out of power. So that's exactly what I did. Over the next few days, I turned my restaurant into petition headquarters. Every customer who came by got a side of fries and a clipboard. Enjoy your meal, I'd say. Oh, and while you're here, want to help get rid of Karen? People signed in droves. By the end of the week, we had way more than 51% of homeowners on board. Karen's reign of terror was officially over. I filed the petition with the HOA board, and they had no choice but to schedule a vote. The night of the meeting, the entire neighborhood showed up. Karen sat at the front of the room, looking smug until I handed over the petition. The HOA secretary read it aloud. The moment she announced that we had enough signatures, the crowd erupted in applause. Karen's face went from pale to bright red in seconds. This is an outrage, she screeched. You can't just vote me out. Oh, but we can, I said, grinning. And we did. A final vote was held, and sure enough, Karen was officially removed as HOA president. She stood up, seething, her hands clenched into fists. You think this is funny? You think you've won? I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. Karen, I didn't just win. I grilled you. The room exploded with laughter. Karen stormed out, humiliated, and just like that her tyranny was over. A few days later, to celebrate, I threw a massive barbecue in my front yard. The whole neighborhood came out. We ate, we laughed, and we toasted to finally being free from Karen's ridiculous rules. And just when I thought it couldn't get any better, Mrs. Jenkins raised her drink and made an announcement. Well, folks, she said, since we need a new HOA president, I'd like to nominate our very own neighborhood chef, Mr. Lawson. The crowd cheered. And that's how I went from fighting the HOA to running it. Now, my restaurant was officially HOA approved, and Karen? Well, let's just say she packed up and moved out shortly after. Turns out, she couldn't handle living in a neighborhood where people actually enjoyed themselves. Like and subscribe for more videos like this.